Full feature versus manual flashes. Each have their pros, each have their cons. And really the primary deciding point between whether you get a full feature versus a manual flash is just going to be your overall budget. The price points for full feature versus manual flashes are very, very different. And if we all had the money, well, there's not really any reason to get manual flashes because full feature ones do what a manual flash does and a lot more. So let's discuss these differences, and then you guys can decide if it's in the cards, especially when you're going to lighting 201 and 301. If you need multiple off-camera flashes, you might benefit from getting manual flashes because they're much less expensive. So if they get destroyed or ruined or something goes wrong, then they're less expensive to replace, although they are a little bit more cumbersome in controlling. But let's talk about these differences. Now, over here on my left, I have the Photix Metros Plus. Now, if there was one third-party full-featured flash that I would recommend, it would be this one. The Photix Metros Plus is around 400 bucks, and this is as full-featured as a flash gets. You can get it for both Nikon and Canon systems. They'll probably come out with additional support for other camera systems as well in the future. And for what the price point is, for 400 bucks, you're getting a lot, okay? Let's talk about what you're getting. So with a full feature flash, you get focus assistance, okay? So you can typically see that on the front, there's gonna be a little infrared beam. That little infrared beam is actually gonna help you in dark situations to get your focus. Let's talk about what else this includes. We have Ttl and manual control. Ttl means through the lens exposure, basically. So when you are firing your flash, basically it's gonna fire a pre-flash, okay? So it's pretty instantaneous. So when you take a shot, it looks as if your flash just fired once, but in reality, your flash actually fired a pre-flash to test the exposure. And then what does the flash do? It measures the amount of light that it needs to put onto the subject. Now, TTL is a nice starting tool, kind of like a nice starter tool for those that are getting new into, or getting into flash, but it does have its limitations, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. They also have high-speed sync, okay? So we can actually take the shutter speed above 1/200 of a second, which we'll talk about again more later on. They also include RCS, rear curtain sync. We talked about that a little bit earlier when we were dealing with slowing down the shutter and using either FCS, first curtain sync, or RCS, rear curtain sync. Manual flashes don't have that. In addition, it includes pulse modes or Hertz modes, where we can basically make the flash fire multiple times within, say, a shutter duration. So if I wanted to set my shutter speed to 1 second, I could have my flash fire 5 times within that 1 second to get different types of creative effects. We also have infrared triggering, okay? So on, like, say, a 580EX, we would have infrared, where basically we can use the 580X to control another off-camera Canon flash that has infrared. Now on the Metros Plus, we actually go a step further. The Metros Plus includes radio triggering, which is far better than infrared triggering. Radio triggering will actually allow you to trigger an off-camera unit that's out of line of sight, basically, that you cannot see. That's much further in distance and so forth. Infrared is great when you're 10 feet away, but radio is fantastic at 100 feet, 200 feet, and so forth in triggering off-camera flashes. Again, this is really more of a lighting 201 and lighting 301 type feature, but these full feature flashes, some have that ability built in. The Canon 600EX RT is another radio triggering flash system, but that comes in this guy, and this is only 400 bucks. So this also includes radio control, so we can actually control other Metros Plus units from this unit on our hot shoe. Okay, so I can actually control, if I'm using off-camera flashes, off-camera Metros Pluses, I can actually control all of those from this one unit. This also includes off-camera TTL, or some full-feature flashes include off-camera TTL, meaning that the off-camera flashes, I can actually use that through the lens exposure mode as well. So I don't need to set it to manual, I don't need to set my own exposure. It'll do the same thing as your on-camera full-feature flash would do. It'll fire a pre-flash right when the shutter opens, and it'll get, just before the shutter opens. And then when the shutter opens, it'll fire the actual flash based on that reading it gets. Okay, so that was a lot of different features. Those were 9 kind of primary features of a full featured flash. And basically, again, depending on the model, the unit that you get, some full feature flashes may have some of those features, some may have all of those features. It just depends. There's kind of different varying degrees. Okay, what are the cons of a full feature flash? Well, the main one that we've already talked about is the price. This is 400 bucks. Manual flashes you can get for 70 bucks, 80 bucks, 100 bucks. This one is the best manual flash you can get, and it's 180 bucks. So obviously this is more expensive. When you're talking about getting onto lighting 201 and lighting 301, where we need to buy 3 or 4 of these units, that gets quite pricey very quickly. A 600 EXRT is 500 bucks. And the 600 EXRT, that's Canon's version of basically this same flash with its own built-in radio and everything. It's 500 bucks, and I do prefer it just a little bit over the Mitros Plus, just for sake of kind of, it's just a little bit more refined overall. But as far as the third-party full-featured flash that I would recommend for any system, I can't go wrong with this Mitros Plus unit. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. If it's in the budget and you shoot Canon, maybe the 600 EXRT is where you want to go. But otherwise, I would say look to the Mitros Plus. What are the other cons? Well, with all these crazy features built into this one single unit, the backside is going to get a little bit more complex. It's going to be a little bit more complicated to control. There's going to be a lot of features that you kind of need to learn where the buttons are and how to use. So you are going to need to consult your manual just a little bit to figure out exactly which button to press. Now, the great part about this is that radio triggering is the exact same whether you're using Pocket Wizards or a 600 EXRT or whether you're using the Mitros Plus system. It's simply learning how to control the radio via whatever system that you have, and for that you need to refer to the manual. But same thing with, say, rear curtain sync. Rear curtain sync functions the exact same way across the board. It's just figuring out which button you need to push to get to it. All right, so our favorites on the full-featured side is the Mitros Plus for the price point. It's 400 bucks. My number 2 is the Canon 600 EXRT, and while Nikon flash systems up until this point have been absolutely fantastic and actually quite far ahead of Canon's, they've lagged a little bit in getting out a radio triggering version of their flash system. So the best Nikon flash currently available is still the Nikon SB910, which is actually more expensive than the Canon 600 EXRT and the Mitros. It's 550 bucks, plus it doesn't have radio triggering. So I'd probably say if you're on Nikon, go with the Mitros Plus and wait until Nikon comes out with their new system, at least for now. Okay, let's go over to the manual flash side. Now on the manual flash side, this is incredibly simple to talk about because really there's only 2 pros. Number 1 is that they're far less expensive. We've already talked about that. And number 2 is that it's simple to use. Guys, this only can do one thing, just flash. And it flashes in manual mode. It doesn't have TTL, it doesn't have eTTL, it doesn't have high-speed sync, it doesn't have rear curtain sync, it doesn't have any of these full-featured options. It simply is just a flash. And there's kind of a beauty to that simplicity. That's all it is. So all you need to worry about is your zoom and your power setting. That's all. So on the con side, that's the main con, is this is just a flash. There's no advanced features. There's nothing else. There's no, the focus assist. There's none of those advanced features coming in a full-featured flash. Our favorite of the manual flashes is this guy, the LumiPro LP180, and we'll talk more about flashes independently. When we get to that point in the video, we're going to talk about our favorite flash units overall for both manual and full-featured. But some other great honorable mentions are the newer TT850, which is 100 bucks, the Vivitar 285 HV, which is 100 bucks, and each of these, I have kind of a annoyance with each of these little flashes. They all have one of these issues that I just really don't like, except for the LP180, which I guess the most annoying thing about this is it's more expensive. And then the Yongnuo also, the 563, which is 75 bucks. So obviously this is the most expensive. This is, I guess this is 200 bucks. Around 180 to 200 bucks depending on where you get it. So it's double the price of other manual flashes, if not a little bit more. That's my only annoyance with you. But otherwise, you're fantastic. I love you. I could just, I don't know, marry you. But why don't we go to the next video instead?